Morning guys, hope everybody's had a good weekend. Congratulations to the guys at the Valleys Extreme, for those that took part and finished, and those who took part and didn't finish but had a good time. Well done. Sorry I couldn't get down there, but I've been busy preparing for my Morocco trip. But I'm just in the workshop now at Eurotech and just doing a bit of a wheel bearing job. So we've got this bike I'm working at the moment. It's 2019, but the bike's coming for real wheel bearings, a tyre change and disc and brake pads as well. But we've got the bearings out. We use the heat gun to get the bearings out. One thing I noticed when I was taking the bearings out of this, the inner space was very loose, which suggested to me that there was something not quite right, something was missing. When I've taken the parts out, the inner spacer and the wheel bearings, there should normally be a plastic ring in there which sits in this side of the wheel hub, which locates the inner race, and it also stops the wheel bearing going too far in as well. I'll just look at that in a moment, but we've got the spacer out, pretty grubby, so we're going to get that cleaned up, and the wheel bearings here. Now, one side has gone as opposed to both going. It's one side what's been damaged, and that's looking like it's been damaged because the plastic spacer what should be in there, which keeps the wheel bearings at the same at the correct distance apart, has not been in, and that's what's caused the premature failure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this cleaned up, and then we'll get the part what needs to go in with the new bearings. Okay, so what we've got now, we've got the inner spacer cleaned up, we've got the wheel bearings either side, we've also got a spacer, a washer, plastic washer, and that essentially all it does is, one, is for locating the tube, so it helps locate the tube when you're fitting the second bearing, and B, it will keep the bearing at the right distance from the opposite side of the wheel, the opposite side of the hub, shall I say. So we'll just look at that now when we're applying it and putting it back in the hub. Okay, so we've got the wheel bearing in on the disc side now. It's all nice and clean, and just when you're doing that, just use a bit of heat to warm it up so the bearing goes in nice and easy. Just turn the wheel over. What we'll do now is just put the tube in, and you'll see the tube stands proud of the shoulder. The shoulder here. So what we need to do is, we're going to warm it up first, but then I'll put that spacer in, which will take up the distance and make the top of the spacer level with the top of the tube. So you've seen me warming it up there. It's not mega hot, but it's just enough to give a little bit of expansion on the hub, so the wheel bearing can just go in a little bit easier. Then as it cools, it will just grip the bearing, so it's an interference fit. But you can see I've got the spacer in now, and I've also got the plastic washer what goes in. So you can now see the end of the tube, spacer tube, is level with the plastic washer. That's going to ensure that both sides, well, the inner race and the outer race of the wheel bearing, are kept in line with each other. So when you start tightening the rear wheel axle nut up, you're not going to get any crushing or any sort of displacement of the outer race or the inner race. Okay, so we'll get the bearing in now. So we've got the rear wheel bearing. It's a bit difficult me holding the camera and doing jobs at the same time, but I used this tool. It's just a bearing tool, a drift, and it's the same size as the outer race of the bearing, so it's when you are just drifting it in, I'm only using a small hammer to do that. It's just putting pressure on the outer race of the bearing only when it's being drifted in. So that's the wheel bearing in. You can see the tube inside is lined up with the bearing. Will make it easier when we start putting in the bushes. But we need to put the seals in next and a little bit of grease on both sides. So we've now got the bushes in and the seals and all greased up inside as well. But one thing I've noticed whilst I've been doing this wheel is that a lot of the spokes are loose. There are, you can see the getting close. The gaps here. There's about 10 or 11 spokes I've found so far that are loose, so we've got to take the tyre off anyway. So we'll address that once we've got the tyre off. We can get the wheel in the jig and just tighten the spokes. And if some of the nipples do break, we can replace them while we're doing that. So we've just got the wheel in the jig now, just sorting the spokes out. And you can see, where are we? Yeah, that one. See how far it's unscrewed. It's loose. I can just move it with my fingers. Yeah, and there's 10 or 11 that I've counted so far, like that. So this rider obviously is not used to checking his spokes. I mean, a lot of people don't check the spokes. They ride the bikes and forget about the spokes, but he could have had a wheel collapse on him here. So every now and again, every couple of rides, depending on what type of riding you've been doing, check to make sure your spokes are done up tightly. Do a ring test. I'll just do a comparison. That's reasonably tight. And that's you can tell the difference in sound. The dull thud, that means it's loose. So just by running a span around, you can tell if your spokes need some, tightening up doing.